Tonight's program has certain historical interest, which I am bound to take notice of. For those of you who are interested in historical, interesting notes, this is the first show in my entire performing career that I have had a girl engineer. That's true, you know? And I would like to go on record as saying this is one of the best developments in the field of communications since Marconi first started to fool around the basement. Bring it up big there. Thank you. Up big, that's it. And welcome aboard to the Madhouse, baby. I think you... Welcome aboard. I think you'll like it. What did I do here now? I got so deeply involved in this whole thing that I forgot to bring my material in here. So, Lee, would you please bring all my little thingies in there. Hey, by the way, speaking of little bits of trivia, the little floating things in the wind, after all, this is, it's June. Come on, hon, that's it. Come on, hurry, like a bunny. That's it, move fast. There you go. Very good. See, I'm so gentle with the people around here. We would like to salute the little development that just happened. In fact, for those of you who haven't heard it, it's a sickening development. There's a sleep thief that's working out in San Francisco, the garden spot of the world, the city of, the angels and all, or rather St. Francis, of course. The sleep thief struck again, shattering the slumber of hundreds of San Francisco families by setting off a gigantic air raid siren at 3:15 a.m. The same thing happened back in March. Police said a padlock on the siren switch box was smashed and an alarm clock set for 3:15 a.m. Then police said the culprit shut the box and installed a lock of his own so that the 6-horn siren could not be readily shut down. They couldn't do anything about it. They arrived and it was all locked up, and it was a special lock. The thing screamed for 10 minutes as thousands of irate telephone calls poured into the office. Gigantic air raid siren. They're all calling up. Now, what's going to happen if there's a real air raid? They're going to call up angrily, turn that damn thing off. Pow, zap, nothing left. I've often thought that the first city that would be hit would be San Francisco. I don't know. Maybe it's because it's the smuggest city. It is. Oh, have you ever been out there? Oh, I want to tell you, those people believe that the sun sets over the Presidio and it falls. It comes down around about, 3rd and Market. And all the rest of the country sort of hanging out. Yeah, the rest of the country is kind of hanging on by, just by bare sustenance. In fact, I remember getting off the plane the first time I was in San Francisco, and it was cold and rainy. It's usually that way out there. So I get off the plane, it's cold and rainy, and they were in the middle of some giant construction plant. It looked like this... Actually, the airport around there looked a little bit like the surface of the moon in one of its lesser scenic areas, see? So I get off, it's cold, it's rainy, and this guy comes up to me, and I had just left New York, where the temperature was 74, the sun shining down, people strolling up and down Fifth Avenue. And I get off the plane, and there it is. It's a crummy... The guy grabs me with the arm and says, "Aren't you glad to be here in San Francisco?" And he had that look in the eye. Babbitry is rampant out there. So, all I could say is somebody's giving him the business. Speaking of Babbitry, tonight we're going to do something very special, and I might say that I have to point out that this is liable to be a very special kind of show. So for those of you who are not interested in specialized knowledge, please go down to Dye where they're playing another wonderful group of selections from Sound of Music. I think you'll like that. Well, if you will, please, honey. All right, Ein, Zwei, Drei. Sing it on big there. Oh, hooray, hooray, hooray for the U.S. of A. Hooray for science. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Thank you. That's enough of that. Thank you very much. That's a salute. You can re-cue that now while you do that, honey, and I'll get back. This first engineer I've actually called honey ever. That's a strange feeling. I mean, if I can you imagine me trying that with Marty or with... Oh, boy. Sickening thought. However, nevertheless, what is more American than science? I'll tell you. One of the problems that we have to face in this world today, we're a genuinely scientific nation. I mean it. I mean it so much so, we got problems. In fact, I have a letter here from one of our listeners. We have listeners all over in places, strange places like Melbourne, Florida, for example. And here's a listener writes, and I'm quoting here. Maybe I better not read the letter first. I think I'll read the clipping first and then read the letter. This is Man's Battle Against Science. And it's entitled, the piece is entitled, Man Against Machinery, Hedman Won. Hedman is obviously not a machine, but a man. And this is published in the Brevard County newspaper. It's I don't know what paper it is. It doesn't say. Today, News Today, published in Brevard County, birthplace of the space age. So apparently this is around where they have, Cape Canaveral and all that. It says, Man Against Machinery, Hedman Won, by Charles Reed, South Assistant Metro Editor. G.W. Hedman had just left church, but he wasn't feeling too charitable. A money-grabbing newspaper rack had swallowed his 30 cents and refused to cough up a paper. Has that ever happened to you? Oh, man. So what did he do? He picked up the $50 rack and threw it in his car. He just grabbed the rack and threw it in the back of the car. The removal angered the motel manager, and it was in front of a motel, see, who pleaded with him to leave a note and get a refund later. No dice. Hedman, being an ace attorney and school board member, knew his rights, and he headed for home. Quote, Well, I had an equitable interest in that machinery, he said. It had some of my property in it. I wasn't going to leave it. So he threw the thing in the back of the station wagon. That was Sunday at the Palms by the Sea Motel. Doesn't that sound like an elegant place? Motel manager Nancy Simpson thought larceny charges should be filed. And we quote her here, If he was a kid, somebody would be right on his throat. But since he's a member of the school board, everybody will probably let it drop, she said. Hedman, who drives a 1937 highly polished Rolls-Royce, kindly reminds you with tongue-in-cheek that paper rack, quote, borrowing isn't thievery. I'm not aware of any law that would allow me to leave my 30 cents in a very untrustworthy machine, he said. I didn't get my money back or a paper, and that constitutes fraud by law, if it wasn't larceny. The state provides that if you have the intent to deprive the owner of it permanently, it's larceny. That was not my intent. I just wanted to borrow it for a while. Hedman said the whole affair was a matter of man versus machinery, something, quote, that's been going on since the beginning of the technical revolution. It was almost 3 years ago to the day that former O'Galley judge Harvey Poe did the same thing in Titusville. I guess there's something in the moon phase that makes attorneys do that, he said. Oh, yes, the out-of-county newspaper got its rack back Monday, but only after G.W. Hedman, attorney at law, school board member, and paper rack borrower got his 30 cents back. And he says he hasn't read the paper since. Well, now, I'd like to put this into the files here. No, that's very important now. Put that in the files now. It takes a certain amount of imagination and pizzazz to pick up the machine after you put 30 cents in it and put it in the back of your car and say, I'm leaving. It takes my 30 cents, I take the machine. Now, I'm going to read a letter to you that came with that clipping. Guess who it's from? Well, I'll just read it to you. It says, Dear Shep, at the time of the occurrence described in the attached clipping, I ask myself, quote, what would our fearless leader have me do in these circumstances? I knew right away what I had to do. I did it. Signed, G.W. Hedman. It's one of our listeners. You might know it. I'm serious. You might know it, And there's a guy. As a matter of fact, he drives a 1937 highly polished Rolls-Royce. Says a great deal about him right there, so we want to salute that guy down there in Melbourne, Florida. And I know it ain't easy down there doing that kind of stuff in Melbourne, Florida. You'll have to get your head bopped. But nevertheless, there he is. Now, what is it? It's a fight against the machine, continually. It's a continual running battle, and I think most people are kind of giving up. As a matter of fact, I think the machine is winning, and I'm going to No, I'm going to submit to you this belief. Have you noticed the growth of computer dating? Now, Portnoy's complaint would never have been written had Portnoy submitted to the computer. Now, I'm serious. If you know anything about Portnoy's complaint, you know what I'm talking about. Now, I think that, on the other hand, remember, I'm not saying a pro-machine thing. What I am submitting to you is that the machine is slowly beginning to win, and people are beginning to concede that the machine, or not concede, they're beginning to believe that the machine is more trusty than man. And with the growing mistrust that people have for one another in this country, and man, it's galloping in that department, I suspect you're going to see there will be a growing belief in the machine as ultimate salvation. For one thing, machines don't have any color. There is not an ethnic machine born yet. Now, if you think the ethnic hang-up is not bad, I want to tell you, let me tell you how sick people get, and I'm going to say it that way, if you can define paranoia as sickness. Here, a couple of, maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I mean, all you have to do is mention a name on the air, any name, and you're going to get an angry letter from somebody saying you're defaming the entire race of people that X came from, ostensibly. That's fascinating. That's developing, and that's growing. Now, I've been in this business long enough, for those of you who have listened to me, you know that I've been around this racket for a while, and I get a lot of letters, and especially when you're dealing with something as amorphous. By the way, this is WOR, New York, okay, huh? So when you're dealing with something as amorphous as opinion and imagination, which my show deals in, it does not deal in fact per se, you find that you're beating a lot of things out of the woodwork that other guys don't get. So I get thousands of letters during a year, and reading these letters, you begin to see trends developing. And I would say now that more than any time in my entire career, people are becoming more and more self-conscious and less tolerant, and they are also less capable of humor, which, by the way, always runs galloping with self-involvement. That self-involved people are never people who have a sense of humor. You can't imagine Jackie Kennedy laughing out loud. You can't. The more self-involved you are, the less capable you are of laughing, unless it is at someone else's misfortune. Then quite often, you'll find people will laugh, or someone else's, quote, idiocy. You'll find that a lot of humor today is based on exposing the others. The others, always the amorphous others. And I can name dozens of cartoonists that are in that bag. Among them, Pfeiffer, whose general cartoon makes the viewer feel kind of warm. He's one of the smart people who doesn't do this ridiculous stuff. It's the others always that does. And so this is not really a sense of humor. It's in a sense an offshoot of really sadism, not masochism, but sadism. So ultimately, you find, as you read the mail, you find a fascinating development beginning to occur. Now, in my case, I find that if I mention the name of anything on the air, if I say, so here I am, I'm sitting there back in the back of the room, me and all these guys. I says, here I am in the alphabetical ghetto. This is a typical thing that arouses ire. I'm in an alphabetical ghetto. That all of us in the last part of the alphabet are sitting in the back of the room, see? All this crowd, me and Schwartz and Zinsmeister and Chester Wisniewski and Helen Weathers. I will guarantee you by the next day I will get 15 letters saying I have defamed the Poles, I've defamed the Germans. Nobody seems to realize I'm also defaming me. That's okay. See, as far as they're concerned, that's okay, because you're a bum anyway. So ultimately, I'm not defaming anybody. I'm merely relating history. History itself can be defaming, and that's why a lot of people want to rewrite it, incidentally. One of the reasons people like to go back and rewrite history, and they generally do it in fiction, is because it makes it more comfortable to live with. And so if you're part of a race that did something bad once, you don't want that to be on the record, so you wind up rewriting it later on, where it never happened at all. So ultimately, I'm sure that within 25 years, there will be a lot of Germans briskly rewriting World War II. I'm sure that this is just a fact. And so it's it's a human fact too. We don't want to walk around and admit that we did something bad, so we try to eventually rationalize it. But the sick thing that I find happening today is that people seem to believe that they are embattled, no matter what it is. It didn't surprise me that there was an outcry, the whole business of the mafia. This is an example of that. It's very funny. That now, incidentally, already now there I've started 25 letters coming into me right there. So you cannot. Who pointed this out years ago was a very interesting point that he made. A man that I've had my differences with over the years, but in general I find a lot of the things he did in his early career particularly admirable. Henry Morgan. Morgan pointed out many years ago that if you use any accent at all in any of your bits, you're immediately going to be subjected to 1,000 different committees, petitions, etc. Now, I don't know why this is. I don't know. I think there's a certain kind of person who feels insecure, who is very nervous about things like that, who feel, in short, the insecurity may stem from the fact that they recognize the truth of whatever they think you've said. In short, you find people who are let's put it this way, you find people who are embezzlers get very sensitive when you begin to talk about embezzling. and it's just a fact. And I've noticed, too, when you deal in humor, I hope this isn't boring you, but once in a while I like to do a little show about what's happening. And if you say this is irrelevant, friend, this is very relevant to our world today. In fact, it's so relevant hardly anybody mentions it. That you'll find in mass communications, you get almost an instant feedback as to what's happening in a society. I find, for one thing, that people today are delighted when you attack somebody else. That I will get thousands of letters from people applauding the fact that I've attacked this thing or that thing. But the minute, and by the way, the same letter writers will write in outrage screams the minute that I touch on something that's important to them. So I find that this is a growing trend. Now, this was always a natural fact of man, that he tends to rationalize himself, and he tends to be harsh on others. You'll find that people will apply two different sets of standards. One, of course, is to themselves. The other is to the others. That a guy who is cheating on his income tax gets very indignant when he discovers, say, a government official got a $5 kickback, for trying to get a bill through. And he'll do this invariably. A kid, for example, who decries violence in others doesn't think it's kind of silly to be sitting in the basement making a dynamite bomb. So we apply two different standards. If he was to discover, let's say, that the right-wing Birchers were making bombs in the basement, he'd flip. And rightly so, but his bombs are righteous bombs, which means that we can rationalize everything we do, and incidentally, the right does it too. Everybody does it, no question about it. But the thing that I've noticed is the growing numbers of people who do that. In short, there used to be one or two people who were not capable of logic who did this, but now I see whole groups will do it, and there are all kinds of. You'll see it in public life. You'll see people, for example, who may be fantastic. No, I'm just waving my arms. You'll see people who are fantastic peace marchers, we'll say. Oh, they're really for peace. And then if a country they happen to dig is in danger, then they're for ultra-war. It's fantastic. I've seen this happen many times. And it's sad. Not that that they feel this way about it, but that we don't see that flaw in ourselves. That's all. It's rare that you find anybody who will accord to the other guy the kind of chance that he wants in his argument. In short, everybody wants to be heard, but he doesn't want to do any listening. And listening is a bad scene. So I happened to be up at NYU one day when 5 kids jumped up in a meeting where somebody was addressing a group of people, a well-known writer. They jumped up and continued to shout until finally the writer had to leave. And what were they shouting? They were shouting that their side wasn't being heard. Which was kind of funny because ultimately that's the only side they allowed to be heard, and ultimately all the signs just completely inundated the situation, which means that there is a growing intolerance for others in our society. And by the way, that intolerance is growing in the name of tolerance, which they use the word tolerance all the time, and love and so forth. I wonder how many people today who wear love buttons are so consumed by hate that they don't recognize their hate for what it is. I mean, what was the expression? I think I heard an expression from a play one time where the guy says, damn it, it was a movement in the play. He says, damn it, I'm going to teach you love if I have to kill all of you in the process. Well, that's a very interesting remark. And I hear that continually around, and it's being parroted, strangely enough, by otherwise supposedly responsible editorial writers who will say things like that. Speaking of editorializing, do you have the money button there for us, baby? Hit it.
National Airlines says you're gonna have a great
Yeah, National Airlines is back, and if you think you're glad, man, imagine how glad National feels. They're raring to go, ready to prove how much they've missed you. And here are 10 great reasons to fly National. 1, Miami. 2, Fort Lauderdale. 3, Tampa. 4, Jacksonville. 5, Saratoga. 6, Hessville, Indiana. 7, Orlando. 8, Daytona Beach. 9, Baltimore. 10, Charleston. National Airlines is back, all right, Dad, and they're all set for you. You. Come on, sing it, gang. You, sing it. Come on and have a happy.
Come on and have a happy.
Happy.
Come on and have a
Great flight. Yeah. National Airlines says you're gonna have a great flight. Tung. Just ask your travel agent or call National Airlines.
She took 21 gallons of Chevron Supreme, sir.
Wow, I don't have that much cash with me.
Well, sir, would you like to charge it?
See, I don't have my Chevron National credit card with me either.
Well, do you have American Express, MasterCharge, or Bank Americard?
You mean you take those too?
Yes, sir. Over 24,000 Chevron dealers coast to coast now accept American Express, MasterCharge, and Bank Americard.
Say, can I charge oil, tires, or a battery on those cards?
Yes, sir. You can charge it all at Chevron Island.
Great. Here's my card. Say, look at this place. Palm plants, native masks, bamboo thatch over the pumps. It looks like a tropical island.
Here you are, sir. Stop in again.
You bet I will. You say my American Express, Bank Americard, or MasterCharge is good for anything you have on Chevron Island?
That's right, sir.
Well, before I go, I'll take a half dozen native masks, a dozen potted palms, about 14 feet of bamboo thatch, a couple of coconuts.
Yeah. Ooh, that Hawaiian guitar. Did I get an angry letter from a crowd of people who apparently are both, they love organ music and Hawaiian guitars. And incidentally, most people tend to believe that if you don't dig what they dig, there's something very wrong with you. I mean, there's something, it's not, very wrong. In fact, I got an angry letter from a guy who says, when are you going to grow up, you jerk? I love organ music. I love Hawaiian guitar music, and you jerk, I've been listening to you for years, and I'm never going to listen to you again, you jerk, you idiotic jerk. You're one of the most immature jerks I ever heard, you jerk. Well, I suppose he likes to believe that he's a mature letter writer, and yet I'm quoting him almost verbatim, and I've cut out most of the 4-letter words. And what's so strange about it, this was an MD. Yes? So intelligence is no bar to intolerance. In fact, I found that the more intelligent the person he is, quite often the more capable he is of intolerance. Now, his intolerance may be called snobbishness. He may call it a lot of other things. You see, we're getting into deep water here, but nevertheless, that letter is a typical example. All I did was say I don't like organ music and I don't like Hawaiian guitars. What's wrong with that? Nothing. I have merely expressed a taste. Well, does that show that I'm immature? No, as a matter of fact, I think it quite the opposite. I think little old ladies and poodles love Hawaiian guitars, but that's beside the point. Nevertheless, I've noticed this growing, tremendous sense of righteousness coupled with intolerance, which is, I think, a deadly combination. It's a tremendously lethal combination. In fact, it's the kind of combination that led to such things as the Crusades, the Inquisition. Oh, yeah, all these nice little things in the past that led to the Nazis. It led to a lot of little bippies. It led to, many, many things. And I'm sure that before history is finally written and we go the way of the dinosaur, I'm sure that a lot of other things are going to be written into that chapter, because it's a continual and a perpetual human characteristic. Now, I think one of the things that we have to contend with in our time is the belief, which is highly, highly doubtful. And, I'm going to get a lot of letters on this one. We believe seriously that man can be improved the way machines can be improved. We really do believe this. And I'm going to get a lot of letters from people trying to prove to me that man is better than he used to be. Yes, I will. And I'm going to say that the burden of proof, friend, is on you, not me, because history will not buy your argument. In short, are you aware that more people have died in the 20th century? Now, this is an actual, statistically provable fact. More people have died in the 20th century by other man's hands. Now, that means war, murder, and other, let's put it this way, other events which are other than natural events, than all of recorded history combined. So it's very difficult for you to prove to me that man is better today than he was, say, 300 years ago, if you define hate for his fellow man as one criterion of improvement. Now, I can say that one part of man has improved, obviously. That is his ability to deal with and manufacture and construct contrivances. Now, there is a great deal of zoological proof that man's ability to build contrivances, let's put it this way, his ability to build machinery, is directly related to his ability as a nesting creature. In other words, the nest is a contrivance. And whenever an animal is looked upon as a nesting creature, in other words, a creature that builds a device to live in, now that's not the same. Most fish don't. So there's large numbers of animals that do not create nests. Many. For example, the bear does not create a nest. The bear will crawl into a cave, which is already there. The bear does not hollow out a tree to create a nest. So it's a non-nesting creature. They can prove evolution of nest-building techniques on the part of certain creatures. Now, in other words, what we're saying here is that one instinct, and the nest-building instinct, is an instinct. It's not something that can be learned. You cannot teach a bear to build nests. Not in the wild. You may be able to teach a bear to do a trick, but he will quickly revert. If you put him back into his natural habitat, he will quickly forget what you taught him. This, incidentally, is the Elsa, the cute little lion fallacy. The belief that if you teach a lion to eat carrots, well, that lion is living in a baby pen, a baby carriage, or a playpen in your kitchen. He may be eating carrots because that's the only game in town. That's the only thing you give him. But quickly given the chance to revert, in the wild, he will revert to the carnivore that he is, which is a fact. By the way, before we go any further, I would like to tell you that there's been a tremendous, and I mean a tremendous, response on this wild Year One poster. In fact, already, a lot of people who have gotten their Year One poster have been writing back and ordering more for gifts and stuff. This is one of the greatest posters I've ever seen for just a thing to hang in your pad. Now, I can't describe it. I'm serious. It is an indescribable poster. I'm going to hold it up here so that you can see. You probably haven't seen this thing. It's a strange, surrealistic, evocative, subtle, curiously yay-saying poster. It's about mankind, as a matter of fact, this giant one here that you see in the foreground. And incidentally, it happens to be one of the best lithograph jobs I've ever seen. You wouldn't believe from 3 feet away that this isn't some kind of an original gouache, it looks like. It's a beautiful lithographic job. And it's in about 25 colors. I can only tell you it's a wildly colorful thing. And it's called a Year One poster. At the bottom it says, Heaven, Earth, Rock, Beatles, Sound, Time come together at the Kingdom. And it's a strange, evocative kind of a jigsaw puzzle of life. And it's a wild poster. And we've been getting all kinds of response on it, and a lot of strange letters from people who have gotten this thing, and some people have literally knocked them out of their chair because if you look carefully at it, a lot of stuff begins to evolve. And by the way, it's a day glow poster, which means that a lot of stuff shows up under certain light that does not appear when you look at it in conventional light. So it has many things going for it. And it's a $2 poster, and you're not going to be able to buy it at any other place. It's not in stores, anything like that. And if you'd like to order one of these things, and incidentally, you're not making any risk, because they'd be delighted to send your money back if you're not flipped on this thing. Send a check or money order, and it is genuinely color. This is not a black and white blow-up poster. Not at all, I repeat. It is genuine, wild, magnificent lithographic color, and it's an original painting. You send $2 in check or money order to Year One. Just write it. Don't address any checks or anything to me or to the station. Address them to Year One, 460 West 34th Street, New York, New York. I repeat, Year One, 460 West 34th Street, New York, New York. And I'm guaranteeing you personally they'll send your dough back if you're not flipped. And it's a wild poster. Now, I'd like to get back to this thing, if I may. I hope I'm not boring you, talking about 1 minute. Something's coming here. Big, important thing. We've just got a note here. Here it's coming in. It's coming in from the production department. Ah, yes. Yes, indeed. A very important personage has just arrived. Plug him into the machine, honey. Hit the button. Ding, ding, dong, ding, ding, dong, ding, dong, ding.
Hey, all you have to do is try it. Hey, all you have to do to like it is try it. Dr. Pepper, oh, it's so good. Dr. Pepper, oh, it's so good. Dr. Pepper, yeah, Dr. Pepper, the most misunderstood soft drink in America.
Dr. Pepper may be America's most misunderstood soft drink, but not for long.
You don't mind if I sit in there with the boys there with my Jew's heart, do you? Doesn't that thing fit right in there? Yeah, oh yes. Now intolerance takes many shapes today, and it's curious. Some of the shapes, I've never seen anything quite like this. For example, do you know that the fact that I play this instrument here, which is hi, Rosemary, it's one of the oldest instruments in the world, this Jew's harp, seems to offend many people. Yes, I'll get angry letters from people. Why? Don't ask me why. People's intolerance today knows no bounds. And somehow they seem to relate that with the young. By the way, I think there's a great intolerance among many older people for the younger people in this country. Tremendous intolerance. And I might say it's vice versa. Let's face that. Which, incidentally, is rarely pointed out. Most people talk about the intolerance of age, the older people towards youth, but they rarely point out the fact that this is a two-way stretch. And as a matter of fact, the intolerance of youth for age has been growing by leaps and bounds. And so we don't really. So you can't separate the thing. Yeah, it's kind of a give and take situation. It's hard to know what started it. But the intolerance of people today takes forms which I've never seen in all the years in radio. Never seen it. I'll give you an example of the kind of intolerance that you find. They're very subtle. For example, there may be even intolerance against publications on an official level. And I'll give you an example of that. If a short story writer writes a short story for, let's say, the New Yorker magazine, that's accepted by large numbers of people. And they don't get angry, even if he uses 4-letter words in it. Somehow that's official literature. If the same short story writer were to write that same short story for Playboy, it wouldn't even be in the libraries, curiously enough. And so this is another form of intolerance. And incidentally, that happens to go all the way through. It's an old axiom in the literary industry. In fact, a friend of mine is a publisher, and he'll tell you this. He says that if a short story, a major short story writer, say in Playboy, were to put together a publication of short stories of his writings, it would not even be reviewed by the New York Times. That's a fact. If, on the other hand, no matter how well they were done, on the other hand, if that same short story writer were to have written for, say, the Atlantic Monthly, or say, the New Yorker, it would quite possibly get a front-page review in the book review section. So this kind of intolerance is everywhere. There's a strange growing thing. So it's causing, I think it's causing great splits. I won't be using any records, so it's okay. I think it's causing a great schism in the country in various areas. In other words, if one part of the country is intolerant towards something that another part of the country admires, already you've got a split. If, on the other hand, it works the other way, you have problems. You know, I find that many guys, and I'll give you another little example of intolerance. It even fits into such things as strange things like whiskey. For example, I know one guy who is ashamed to order, when he goes to bars or cocktail parties in the New York Midtown area, bourbon. He happens to like bourbon. He's discovered that people tend to put down bourbon drinkers, so he orders scotch, because scotch is socially acceptable in Manhattan. That's the drink of the thinking people. Bourbon is the drink of rednecks. And so he does not order bourbon. And to show you how ludicrous this is, in Europe, I was in Europe here last year, I find that in Europe, the one product that they admire most from America, outside of our plumbing, and outside of the dollar bill, is bourbon. In fact, one of my English friends, who is incidentally titled and is a high executive with the BBC, he asked me, he says, the one thing he wanted me to bring to him in England, he says, can you get me a bottle of fine bourbon? He says, if you can get Jack Daniels, I'd really appreciate it. And so I was kind of surprised, because my friends here in America, they all believe that, the Scotch is the whole thing with the English and so on. So intolerance has all kinds of faces. It's a strange growing thing. Now, I'm not so sure why it is. We have intolerance towards different parts of the country even now today. And of course, overriding almost all of this is a kind of intellectual intolerance for America and American life itself on the part of many, many would-be intellectuals or actual intellectuals. Now, this coupled with the explosive situation of the world can result in almost like an atomic fission. I mean, of passions. So which way the ball will go, I don't know. I'm only giving you an interim report here on the growth of what I seem to think, what I believe personally, is a growth of curious personal, and they're not the same kind of biases and prejudices that used to exist. See, I think we often think in terms of the past. So when I use the term intolerance, a lot of people immediately think of race. They don't think of any other kinds of intolerance, because that was a big issue, I think, 15, 20 years ago. Now there's different kinds of intolerance. There may be intolerance for the guy that cuts his hair too short. just because he likes short hair. That's enough to make you be put down in a lot of cocktail parties I know in New York City. You may be too fat. There's a great intolerance for fat people today. And any fat person can tell you that being fat today is almost, it's a bigger sin than being a convicted embezzler. I mean, and so there's all kinds of intolerances that are slowly beginning to grow that don't have much relationship with the kinds of intolerance that people felt in the past. We've yet to turn them. We've yet to call them intolerance. You find that today you find there is even growing a strange development of our time. That's the intolerance between the sexes. And so you find groups on both sides of the sexual barrier are intolerant of the other group. You find large numbers of ladies are intolerant of men. Now, they may call it something else. Incidentally, very few people's intolerances are called by their rightful name. They're usually called a rightful crusade. So, believe me, the Crusades didn't think they were being intolerant. They were on a crusade. They were bringing, truth. The Inquisition did not believe it was bad. It didn't, really. And so ultimately you find large numbers of males have great intolerance for females, and vice versa. And I don't know where this is going to stop. I think in the next century there will be movements to attempt to bring back integration to the sexes. Has it occurred to you that this may be the next great separatist movement, and until ultimately there will be some radical in the year 2170 who will come up and he'll propose integration of the sexes. And of course he'll be run out of town, and they'll have to call the troops to Little Rock, and some governor is going to get out and say, "Ain't going to be no women come into my university." And on the other hand, there's going to be a lady go, "No evil man is going to step over my dead body to this university." And eventually there'll be an Atlee Stevenson grow who will call for kindness and consideration. He'll be hooted down. Women, men, both will demand their own country, and who knows where it's going to go. But intolerance is on the increase, I'm afraid. And most of the intolerance hasn't been called that. I think we all recognize the intolerance of race. We all recognize the intolerance of class. But the intolerance of style is an interesting new type of intolerance. The intolerance of the fat and the thin, the intolerance of hair. This is all style, and ultimately could even be more deadly.